Imagine a network of roads so advanced that even 2 millennia later, it still influences our modern highway system. Roman roads weren't just pathways. They were the lifeblood flowing through the body of the Roman Empire, connecting cities, armies, and cultures across 3 continents. But how did the Romans build and maintain this incredible infrastructure, and what can their ancient system of administration teach us about engineering and management today? To truly understand the scale of this achievement, let's journey back in time. In 312 before Christ, Rome began constructing the Appian Way, the first great Roman road. Picture this. A perfectly straight path cutting through the Italian countryside, built with such precision that portions of it are still intact today. This wasn't just a path beaten down by countless feet and wheels. This was a carefully engineered marvel designed to stand the test of time. By 200 before Christ, as Rome's power grew, so did its road network. The Republic was expanding rapidly, conquering new provinces across the Mediterranean, and with each new territory came the need to connect it to the heart of Rome. Roads began stretching into Spain, North Africa, and Greece, each one built with the same meticulous attention to detail that characterized Roman engineering. But the true golden age of Roman roads arrived during the height of the empire. By 117 after Christ, under Emperor Trajan, the empire had reached its greatest extent, and with it, the road network had grown to an astonishing 400,000 kilometers. Just imagine that, enough road to circle the earth 10 times, all built by hand, without modern machinery or computers to aid in their design. These roads weren't just a convenience, they were the sinews that held the empire together. Military legions could march at remarkable speed to quell rebellions or defend borders. Government messages could travel over 100 miles in a single day through the imperial postal system. Merchants could transport goods from Egypt to Britain with unprecedented efficiency, creating one of the first truly interconnected economies in human history. There's an old saying that all roads lead to Rome, and this wasn't just a metaphor. The Romans literally designed their entire road system to radiate outward from the capital, creating a hub-and-spoke network that allowed them to maintain control over far-flung territories. This network was so effective that the empire managed to stay unified for centuries, despite spanning 3 continents and encompassing countless different cultures and peoples. The legacy of these roads extends far beyond their time. Many modern European highways still follow the exact routes laid down by Roman engineers 2,000 years ago. The administrative systems they developed to maintain this vast network influenced transportation management for centuries to come. Even the standard width of railway tracks in many countries can be traced back to the width of Roman roads, designed to accommodate 2 Roman chariots side by side. So join me as we explore the remarkable story of how the Romans built, maintained, and administered the most advanced road network the ancient world had ever seen, a system so ahead of its time that we're still learning from it today. This isn't just a tale of engineering prowess, it's a story of human ingenuity, administrative genius, and the power of connectivity to build and sustain civilizations. If you love discovering secrets from the past that changed the world, hit that like button and subscribe to the Legacy of Empires channel. The history I'm about to tell influences our lives to this day. Prepare yourself for an epic journey through history. Ring that bell so you don't miss any battles, empires, or mysteries of ancient civilizations. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself walking along an ancient Roman road. Beneath your feet lie perfectly aligned stone blocks, fitted together with such precision that many have remained in place for over 2,000 years. These weren't rough paths, but masterpieces of engineering, flat, smooth surfaces designed for efficient travel, with each stone carefully selected and placed by skilled hands. As you walk, lush green hills rise on either side, framing your journey just as they did for Roman legionaries, merchants, and messengers centuries ago. In the distance, a stone bridge arches gracefully over a river valley, a structure that seems to defy gravity itself. These bridges, some spanning over 100 feet, were built without modern equipment or mathematical calculations. Yet many still stand today, testament to Roman engineering genius. What makes these roads truly remarkable is that you can actually experience them firsthand in the modern world. The famous Appian Way, or Via Appia as the Romans called it, still cuts through the Italian countryside south of Rome. Parts of it remain exactly as they were when chariots and legions traveled its length nearly 2,000 years ago. Imagine walking the same stones that once felt the footsteps of Julius Caesar, St. Paul, and countless anonymous travelers throughout history. Roman roads weren't just built in Italy either. From the scorching deserts of North Africa to the fog-shrouded forests of Britain, from the mountains of Turkey to the plains of Spain, these remarkable highways connected an empire spanning 3 continents. And in many of these places, sections of original Roman roads continue to be discovered by archaeologists, sometimes hiding just inches beneath modern streets. If we could travel back in time, the sensory experience of these roads would be overwhelming. The rhythmic creaking of wooden ox carts would echo across the countryside as they transported goods from distant provinces. The air would be filled with a tapestry of scents: olive oil from Spain, exotic spices from the east, the earthy smell of leather and wool, the sweat of animals and travelers making their long journeys. At regular intervals along the major roads, way stations called mansiones offered rest and refreshment, filling the air with the aroma of fresh bread and local wines. What truly set Roman roads apart, though, was their sophisticated construction. Far from simply laying stones on dirt, Roman engineers built their roads as complex, multi-layered structures. They typically began by digging a trench and filling it with rubble for drainage. Above this came layers of crushed stone and sand, crowned with large, flat paving stones fitted tightly together. The road surface was slightly curved, a feature you can still observe on preserved sections, to allow rainwater to run off into drainage ditches that lined both sides. In swampy areas, they drove wooden piles into the ground to create a stable foundation. When crossing mountains, they carved passages through solid rock, and in cities, many roads included sidewalks and curbstones, much like our modern streets. Some even featured grooves cut into the surface at crossings to prevent chariots from moving too quickly, ancient speed bumps, if you will. Perhaps most impressive was their attention to maintenance. The Romans established a sophisticated system for road upkeep, with officials responsible for specific sections. Mile markers, many of which still exist today, help travelers know their exact location and distance from the nearest town. These stone pillars, called miliaria, were the ancient equivalent of our highway signs. One fascinating archaeological discovery reveals how thoroughly the Romans thought about the user experience of their roads. At regular intervals, they installed mounting blocks to help riders climb onto their horses. They built roadside fountains and wells for travelers to refresh themselves. They even created rest areas with benches where weary journeyers could pause and recover their strength. These aren't just interesting historical footnotes. They're physical connections to our past that you can still touch and experience today. When you place your hand on a stone of the Via Appia, you're connecting directly with the ancient world in a way few other archaeological remains allow. These roads weren't just paths for travel. They were the technological marvels of their age, as impressive to ancient peoples as our modern superhighways and bullet trains are to us today. Behind every great Roman road was a cast of fascinating characters, from visionary emperors to the nameless workers who laid each stone. Let's meet some of the key players in this epic tale of infrastructure. Emperor Augustus stands tall as perhaps the greatest champion of Roman road building. After emerging victorious from the civil wars that ended the Republic, Augustus understood something profound about governing a vast empire. Control required connection. In 20 before Christ, he made a decision that would transform the empire. He established the position of curator viarum, officials specifically responsible for road maintenance. But Augustus didn't just create bureaucracy, he led by example, personally funding repairs to the Via Flaminia using his own fortune. He even placed a golden milestone in the Roman Forum, marking the symbolic starting point from which all roads in the empire were measured. What made Augustus truly brilliant was his understanding that roads weren't just military assets, they were powerful propaganda. Each milestone bore his name, reminding travelers throughout the empire of who had made their journey possible. He once famously declared, "I found Rome a city of brick and left it a city of marble." But he might just as well have said, "I found Rome a collection of territories and left it a connected empire." Another road-building visionary was Emperor Trajan, who ruled from 98 to 117 after Christ. His famous column in Rome depicts the construction of a military road through the rugged Danube region during his Dacian campaigns. Trajan's engineers cut through mountains and bridged seemingly impossible gaps to create routes that armies could follow. The stunning Trajan's Bridge over the Danube was over 3,500 feet long, the longest arch bridge in the world for over 1,000 years. But not everyone in Rome shared this enthusiasm for road construction. In the Senate, fiscal conservatives like Cato the Younger frequently argued against what they saw as excessive spending. "Must we bankrupt our treasury to build roads to places no Roman needs to visit?" one senator reportedly complained. These political battles over infrastructure spending might sound surprisingly familiar to modern ears. Local leaders in conquered territories had their own concerns. As Roman roads pushed into their regions, tribal chieftains in Gaul, Britain, and elsewhere realized that roads that brought Roman trade also brought Roman tax collectors, Roman soldiers, and Roman cultural influence. The Celtic queen Boudicca's famous revolt against Roman rule in Britain in 61, after Christ specifically targeted Roman colonies connected by the new road network. She understood that attacking these arteries would strike at the heart of Roman power. What's fascinating is how different social classes experienced these roads in completely different ways. For Roman legionaries, the roads meant grueling marches, 20 to 25 miles per day in full armor and equipment. These soldiers didn't just use the roads, they often built them. Many sections were constructed by legionaries during peacetime to keep them busy and fit. Imagine the pride a soldier might feel, returning years later on a road he had helped build with his own hands. For merchants, the roads represented unprecedented opportunity. Before Roman highways, transporting goods overland was so expensive that shipping by sea was the only economical option for most trade, even with all its dangers. Roman roads changed this economic equation dramatically. A merchant could now move goods from Gaul to Rome at a fraction of the previous cost. Suddenly, inland regions could participate in the wider economy, selling their goods to distant markets. For the average peasant farmer, roads brought both opportunities and challenges. On one hand, they could now take surplus crops to markets in ways previously impossible. On the other hand, the arrival of cheaper goods from other regions created new competition. Many rural people looked at roads as pathways to a better life, a means of escape from their village to try their fortune in a larger town or even Rome itself. One of the most intriguing aspects of Roman roads were the cursus publicus, the imperial postal service established by Augustus. Special couriers could travel up to 50 miles per day, changing horses at stations spaced throughout the network. With this system, news of important events could traverse the empire at unprecedented speed, though still taking weeks to reach the farthest provinces. But for all we know about Roman roads, tantalizing mysteries remain. Why were some major routes suddenly abandoned while others continued in use for centuries? Archaeological evidence shows that certain well-built roads fell into disuse surprisingly quickly. Was this due to shifts in political power, changes in trade patterns, Or perhaps environmental factors like flooding or landslides made certain routes impractical to maintain. Another mystery involves the road builders themselves. We know that Roman engineers were capable of remarkable precision, but exactly how did they survey perfectly straight routes over dozens of miles without modern tools? Some scholars believe they used simple but ingenious methods involving poles and sighting lines, while others suggest more sophisticated techniques involving the groma, a Roman surveying instrument. Perhaps the greatest characters in the story of Roman roads are the countless unnamed individuals who built them, the engineers who designed them, the surveyors who laid them out, and the laborers who constructed them stone by stone. These people created a network so well designed that parts of it have survived for 2,000 years, a testament to human ingenuity that continues to inspire us today. Now let's dive into the real genius behind Roman roads, their sophisticated engineering, and the monumental effort required to maintain them across an empire spanning 3 continents. When Romans built a road, they weren't just laying stones on dirt. They were creating carefully engineered structures designed to last for centuries. The construction typically began with surveyors who used specialized instruments called gromae to plot remarkably straight routes across the landscape. These weren't just approximately straight. Many Roman roads run perfectly straight for miles, deviating only when faced with impassable terrain. Once the route was established, workers dug a trench up to 5 feet deep, a backbreaking task done entirely by hand. This wasn't excessive caution, it was brilliant engineering. The Romans understood something that would be rediscovered in modern times. A road is only as good as what lies beneath it. Into this trench went the first layer, the statumen, consisting of large, flat stones laid as a foundation. On top of this came the rudus, a layer of crushed stones or rubble mixed with lime mortar. Next was the nucleus, a finer layer of compacted gravel or sand that provided drainage. Finally, the summum dorsum, large, flat paving stones fitted together with astonishing precision, formed the visible surface. This multi-layered approach created roads that could support heavy traffic while resisting the destructive effects of water and frost. A particularly clever feature was the curved profile. Roman roads weren't flat across their width, but slightly raised in the center, allowing rainwater to drain away rather than pool on the surface. Drainage ditches along both sides carried this water away, preventing the erosion that had destroyed earlier road systems. But building these roads was just the beginning of the challenge. Maintaining them across thousands of miles and diverse environments proved to be one of the empire's greatest ongoing challenges. In mountain regions, landslides regularly damaged sections of road. In northern provinces like Britain and Germania, freeze-thaw cycles heaved and cracked paving stones. In desert regions, wind-blown sand constantly threatened to reclaim the carefully built highways. Emperor Augustus recognized that construction without maintenance would be futile. He established a systematic approach to road maintenance with dedicated officials, the curatores viarum, responsible for specific routes. Funding came from imperial coffers for the most important military roads, while provincial authorities maintained regional routes. In some cases, wealthy local citizens would pay for repairs as a form of public service and political advertisement, their names proudly inscribed on milestones for all travelers to see. The Romans faced a particular challenge in hostile territories. Roads that brought legions could also bring enemies deeper into Roman territory if left unguarded. Strategic roads often required permanent garrisons at key points, adding enormous expense to the system. In places like Hadrian's Wall in northern Britain, elaborate forts were constructed at regular intervals along the accompanying military way road. One of history's great ironies is that the very success of the Roman road system contributed to the empire's later vulnerabilities. As Rome grew dependent on rapid troop movements to respond to threats, any breakdown in the road network created strategic weaknesses. This became painfully apparent during the 3rd century crisis, a period of imperial collapse between 235 and 284 after Christ. During these chaotic 50 years, with the empire facing multiple external invasions and no fewer than 26 different men claiming the imperial throne, the once reliable system of road maintenance collapsed in many regions. Provincial governors hoarded resources rather than investing in infrastructure. Military commanders prioritized immediate defense over long-term maintenance. The result was predictable. Roads deteriorated, communications slowed, and the empire's ability to respond to threats diminished significantly. In the eastern provinces, roads connecting vital grain-producing regions to port cities fell into disrepair, disrupting food supplies to Rome itself. In Gaul, deteriorating routes made it increasingly difficult to respond to Germanic incursions. The empire that had been unified by its roads was now being fragmented by their neglect. Emperor Diocletian, who finally restored order in 284 after Christ, recognized this problem immediately. His sweeping reforms included massive investment in road repairs, understanding that without reliable connections, centralized control was impossible. This lesson wasn't lost on later emperors, who prioritized maintenance of key routes even as the empire's resources dwindled. Fascinating mysteries about these roads continue to puzzle archaeologists today. One of the most intriguing involves wheel ruts found in the stone surfaces. These deep grooves, sometimes several inches deep, suggest extremely heavy loads. Yet how did wooden-wheeled carts transport such weights without themselves being destroyed? Some scholars propose that these ruts developed over centuries of use, while others suggest specialized vehicles designed for heavy transport that haven't been fully documented in historical records. Another mystery surrounds the construction techniques themselves. Certain sections of Roman roads have survived nearly intact for 2,000 years, while modern highways often need resurfacing after just 20 years. What specific techniques or materials allowed for such remarkable longevity? Engineers today continue to study ancient Roman concrete and construction methods, seeking insights that could improve our modern infrastructure. What would you do if you were in charge of this massive road system? Imagine being the emperor during the 3rd century crisis. Would you prioritize maintaining roads to keep the empire connected, or divert those resources to immediate military defense? Pause the video and leave your theory in the comments. What's your historical challenge strategy? Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the Legacy of Empires channel. Beyond the impressive engineering and political significance of Roman roads lies a rich tapestry of cultural beliefs, social structures, and mythical elements that surrounded these ancient highways. These cultural dimensions reveal how deeply roads were woven into the fabric of Roman life and imagination. The maintenance of Roman roads was far from haphazard. It was a sophisticated social system that reflected Rome's brilliant administrative mind. Specialized maintenance teams called viaciari were permanent staff assigned to specific road sections. These weren't just casual laborers, but skilled workers who understood the complex engineering of Roman roads. They lived in maintenance stations positioned at regular intervals along major routes, ready to address damage from weather, wear, or sabotage. Funding for this maintenance came through a fascinating mix of sources that reveals much about Roman governance. The most strategically important highways, those connecting Rome to key provinces, received direct imperial funding from the treasury. Provincial roads typically fell under the responsibility of local governors who allocated tax revenues for their upkeep. But perhaps most interesting was the role of wealthy private citizens in this system. For the Roman elite, funding road repairs was a prestigious form of public service. Their contributions immortalized on inscribed milestones, an early form of political advertising that proclaimed their generosity to every passing traveler. This practical administration was deeply interwoven with Roman religious beliefs. Roads weren't merely physical infrastructure, but spaces imbued with divine protection and significance. Mercury, the swift-footed messenger of the gods, held special importance for travelers. Small shrines to Mercury were commonly placed at crossroads, where travelers would leave modest offerings for safe journeys. These crossroad shrines, called compita, became important community gathering places where rural communities would hold festivals and ceremonies. The boundaries of roads held particular religious significance. Terminus, the god of boundaries, was thought to protect the stone markers that defined the edges of roads. To move or damage these markers wasn't just vandalism, it was sacrilege that invited divine punishment. During the annual festival of Terminalia, held in February, communities would gather to decorate these boundary stones with garlands and perform rituals to ensure the continued protection of their roads. Roman soldiers had their own road rituals. Before major campaigns, commanding generals would often perform sacrifices at the gates of Rome, where major roads began, seeking divine favor for the march ahead. Legionaries sometimes placed small offerings beneath road foundations during construction, similar to our modern concept of a cornerstone time capsule, creating a literal foundation of ritual beneath every major highway. The Romans weren't alone in attributing mystical significance to roads. As their highways pushed into new territories, they encountered local beliefs about pathways and incorporated them into their own. In Gaul, Celtic peoples believed certain ancient paths followed the routes of gods and heroes. When Romans built their straight highways over these traditional pathways, cultural fusion occurred. Local deities became associated with Roman roads, creating unique regional variations in road-related worship. Fascinating legends and superstitions grew around these roads. One persistent tale told of phantom travelers who would appear at night, walking against the flow of traffic. Seeing such a figure was considered a terrible omen. Another common belief held that crossroads were thin places between the mortal and spirit worlds, leading to various protective rituals performed when passing such junctions after dark. One of the most captivating legends spoke of the road to the edge of the world. Romans knew the world was round, but believed there were limits to the habitable regions. A popular myth claimed that any emperor who could build a road to this fabled edge would achieve immortality. Some scholars believe this legend may have influenced Emperor Trajan's ambitious road building into the far reaches of Dacia and beyond, pushing Roman infrastructure to what they considered the very edges of civilization. These roads carried not just people and goods, but ideas and cultural influences. Roadside inns became melting pots where travelers from across the empire exchanged stories, beliefs, and customs. The spread of mystery religions like Mithraism and eventually Christianity followed these very roadways, with early Christian missionaries deliberately establishing communities along major routes to maximize their reach. Even the measurement of these roads took on cultural significance. The Roman mile, mille passus, or 1,000 paces, was defined as 1,000 double steps of a Roman legionary. This human-scaled measurement literally embodied the connection between the Roman military and the empire's infrastructure. Milestones weren't just distance markers, but physical embodiments of how Romans understood and organized their world. Perhaps most poignantly, roads connected Romans to their ancestors. Funeral monuments lined the approaches to major cities, particularly along the Via Appia outside Rome. These elaborate tombs featured inscriptions addressing passing travelers directly. "Stop, traveler, and read about who I was." In this way, even the dead remained part of the community, their memories preserved through the endless stream of travelers along these eternal roads. Can you imagine what it would be like to build a road without modern machinery? How would you move massive stone blocks or survey perfectly straight routes across challenging landscapes? Leave your ideas in the comments below. The story of Roman roads mirrors the epic tale of Rome itself, a dramatic arc of ambition, triumph, and eventual decline that played out over centuries. These highways weren't just silent witnesses to history. They were active participants in the empire's greatest victories and most devastating defeats. In the early days of road building, during the Republic around 300 before Christ, roads served primarily military purposes, getting legions quickly to trouble spots along Rome's expanding frontiers. The famous Appian Way, that first great Roman road, was built specifically to move troops south during the Samnite Wars. These early roads were impressive but limited in scope, connecting Rome to nearby territories in Italy. As Rome's power grew in the 2nd and 1st centuries before Christ, so did its road network. Each new conquest brought new highways, creating a web of connections that made the far-flung republic increasingly cohesive. This was the rising action in our story, the ambitious foundation laying that would enable Rome's golden age. The climax of Roman road building came during the Pax Romana, that remarkable period of stability from the reign of Augustus around 27 before Christ until the death of Marcus Aurelius in 180 after Christ. These 2 centuries saw unprecedented expansion and refinement of the road system. Under emperors like Trajan and Hadrian, roads pushed into the furthest reaches of the empire, from the foggy forests of Britain to the sun-baked deserts of Mesopotamia. At this apex, the system worked with remarkable efficiency. Imperial couriers could travel up to 150 miles per day by changing horses at government post stations. News, orders, and intelligence flowed across the empire at unprecedented speed. Trade flourished as merchants transported goods along safe, well-maintained highways. The road system had become both the circulatory system and the nervous system of an empire spanning 3 continents. But within this triumph lay the seeds of vulnerability. Rome had become utterly dependent on its roads. Any disruption to this network could have cascading effects throughout the imperial system. As the 3rd century after Christ dawned, those disruptions began to multiply. The first signs of trouble appeared at the borders. Germanic tribes and Persian forces began targeting Roman roads specifically, understanding their strategic importance. Rather than confronting legions directly, these enemies would damage bridges, block mountain passes, and make sections of road impassable, complicating Roman military responses. What had been a strength, the predictable, efficient movement of troops along well-established routes, became a weakness as enemies learned to anticipate Roman movements. Fascinating subplots emerged during this period of increasing tension. As pressure mounted on the frontiers, some roads took on unexpected new roles. Archaeologists have found evidence that certain highways in Gaul and Britain were deliberately damaged by retreating Roman forces, a scorched earth tactic to slow advancing enemies. Other roads became escape routes for Roman citizens fleeing barbarian invasions. The discovery of buried coin hoards along roads leading away from frontier zones tells a poignant story of families grabbing their valuables and fleeing along the very highways that once symbolized Rome's invincibility. The crisis deepened during the tumultuous 3rd century, with the empire facing simultaneous threats on multiple frontiers and a rapid succession of emperors, many ruling for mere months before being overthrown. The sophisticated road maintenance system began to collapse. Provincial governors hoarded resources that should have gone to road repair. Tax revenue declined as economic troubles mounted. The physical deterioration of roads became both a symptom and a cause of imperial decline. By the 4th century after Christ, the situation had become dire enough that Emperor Diocletian and later Constantine implemented sweeping reforms, attempting to restore the road system as part of broader efforts to save the failing empire. Their partial success brought a temporary revival, but the fundamental challenges remained. The empire simply lacked the resources and centralized authority needed to maintain such a vast infrastructure network. The final chapters of this story played out against the backdrop of Rome's terminal decline. As central authority weakened, maintenance became increasingly localized and irregular. Major routes connecting important cities remained in use, while secondary roads were often abandoned entirely. In some regions, local communities took over maintenance of crucial road sections, sometimes even charging their own tolls, a practice that would become common in the medieval period that followed. Archaeological discoveries have shed fascinating light on this period of transformation. Recent excavations have revealed evidence of toll houses and checkpoints along major roads, particularly in the later imperial period. These small fortified buildings allowed local authorities to collect fees from travelers and merchants, helping fund road maintenance as imperial resources dwindled. Some of these toll houses show signs of having been attacked and burned, testament to the unpopularity of these taxes among the traveling public. The final act of the Roman road story came with the empire's collapse in the West in the 5th century. Without imperial power to maintain them, many roads slowly surrendered to nature. Stone paving was often removed by local people for building materials. In forested areas, trees reclaimed the ancient routes. Yet remarkably, the legacy endured. Medieval kingdoms continued to use the main arteries of the system. Many modern European highways still follow routes established by Roman surveyors 2,000 years ago. Throughout this grand narrative, certain mysteries persist that continue to puzzle historians and archaeologists. One of the most intriguing involves roads that don't follow the Romans' famous preference for straight lines. While many Roman roads run ruler straight for miles, others feature puzzling zigzags and curves. Why would engineers who prided themselves on efficiency create such seemingly inefficient routes? Some scholars argue these deviations were purely practical, avoiding challenging terrain or unstable ground. Others suggest more strategic considerations, such as making it harder for enemy forces to rush directly toward important settlements. Still others point to evidence that some curved sections align with astronomical events or follow much older sacred pathways that held cultural significance to local populations. Each bend and turn in these ancient highways might hold clues to forgotten aspects of Roman strategic thinking, engineering limitations, or cultural accommodation. What makes the story of Roman roads so compelling is that it's not just ancient history, it's a cautionary tale about the vital importance of infrastructure and the consequences of neglecting it. The roads that helped Rome conquer the known world couldn't prevent its fall once the will and resources to maintain them faltered. As we drive our modern highways today, built with technologies the Romans could never have imagined, we might reflect on this ancient lesson about the critical relationship between infrastructure, prosperity, and political stability. 2,000 years after their construction, Roman roads continue to influence our world in ways that would astonish their original builders. These ancient highways didn't just disappear with the fall of Rome. They transformed, evolved, and in many cases continue to serve us today. Their legacy extends far beyond mere stones and mortar, touching nearly every aspect of modern transportation infrastructure and leaving an indelible mark on human civilization. When President Dwight Eisenhower authorized the creation of the American Interstate Highway System in 1956, he wasn't thinking of ancient Rome, or was he? In fact, Eisenhower had been profoundly influenced by his experiences during World War II, when he witnessed firsthand the strategic military advantages of Germany's Autobahn network. But this modern highway system, like the German one before it, drew direct inspiration from Roman engineering principles. The American interstate system, with its emphasis on straight routes, standardized construction, and strategic connectivity, mirrors the ancient Roman approach to road building. Even the concept of federal funding for highways that connect states echoes the imperial treasury's support for roads that connected provinces. The Romans would likely recognize their influence in modern highway design. The multi-layered construction approach they pioneered, with foundation layers, drainage systems, and durable surfaces, remains the standard template for road building worldwide. Even the crowning of roads, That slight curvature to promote water runoff continues to be a fundamental principle of modern highway design. When engineers today design roads to last for decades, they're building on knowledge first developed by Roman surveyors and engineers over 2 millennia ago. Perhaps most remarkably, many modern European highways literally follow the exact same routes established by Roman surveyors. In France, the famous Route Nationale 7 traces sections of the Via Agrippa. In Britain, the A1, one of the country's main north-south arteries, closely follows the old Roman road known as Ermine Street. Walk the streets of central London, and you're often treading the same paths as Roman legionaries and merchants. These aren't just historical curiosities. They reflect the enduring logic of the routes chosen by Roman engineers, who identified the most efficient paths through challenging terrain long before satellite mapping or computer modeling. The influence extends beyond physical infrastructure to how we think about connectivity itself. Today, we navigate with GPS satellites and smartphone apps, technologies that would seem like sorcery to ancient Romans. Yet the fundamental concept behind these modern marvels, creating a standardized system to help travelers find their way across vast distances, began with those stone-mile markers that lined Roman highways. The Romans understood something profound, that prosperity depends not just on the existence of roads, but on travelers' ability to navigate them confidently. Consider how we map and measure our world. The very language we use reflects Roman influence. The word mile comes directly from the Latin mille passus, 1,000 paces of a Roman legionary. Many European countries still use distance markers along highways, a direct descendant of Roman milestones. Even the standard highway width in many nations derives from Roman precedent, originally based on the space needed for 2 military chariots to pass each other comfortably. Recent archaeological discoveries continue to deepen our understanding of this remarkable legacy. Advanced technologies like ground-penetrating radar and LiDAR scanning have revealed hidden sections of Roman roads that have been buried for centuries beneath fields and forests. In 2019, archaeologists in northern Italy used these techniques to discover an entire network of subterranean Roman roads beneath modern farmland, routes that had been completely forgotten, yet had shaped the development of the region for centuries through the placement of field boundaries and property lines. In Britain, recent drought conditions revealed the ghostly outlines of dozens of previously unknown Roman roads as the parched earth showed different growth patterns above ancient foundations. These discoveries suggest that the Roman road network was even more extensive than previously believed, perhaps up to 20% larger than current maps indicate. Each new discovery helps archaeologists understand not just how Romans built their roads, but how these highways influence settlement patterns, trade routes, and cultural exchange throughout the empire. Particularly fascinating are recent discoveries about the environmental impacts of Roman roads. Pollen analysis from ancient roadside ditches shows how the Romans inadvertently spread certain plant species throughout Europe, reshaping ecosystems in ways that persist to this day. The common plantain, for instance, often found along roadsides throughout Europe, appears to have spread along Roman roads, its seeds carried in the mud that clung to wagon wheels and soldiers' boots. In this way, Roman roads didn't just connect human communities, they created new biological corridors that altered the natural world. Modern debates about Roman roads continue to engage historians and archaeologists. Some scholars argue that the empire's road system was ultimately a victim of its own success, that by facilitating rapid communication and transportation, it created dependencies that proved catastrophic when maintenance faltered. Others contend that the deterioration of roads wasn't a cause, but a symptom of broader imperial decline. As central authority weakened, the ability to maintain far-flung infrastructure inevitably suffered. This debate carries important lessons for our own societies. As we confront the challenges of aging infrastructure in many developed nations, the Roman experience offers both inspiration and warning. Their roads lasted for centuries because they were built with extraordinary care and foresight, not designed merely to last until the next election cycle, but to serve generations yet unborn. Yet even these masterfully constructed highways couldn't survive the collapse of the political and economic systems that maintained them. Perhaps the most profound legacy of Roman roads lies in something less tangible, their influence on how we think about connectivity itself. Before Rome, most civilizations viewed roads as local conveniences, not as systems. The Romans were perhaps the first to truly grasp the transformative power of a fully integrated transportation network, how it could unify diverse peoples, spread ideas, and create shared prosperity across vast distances. This conceptual breakthrough echoes today in how we think about everything from highway systems to the internet, as networks that derive their value not from individual segments, but from their interconnectedness. When you drive on a modern highway, open a navigation app, or even follow street signs in a foreign city, you're experiencing the distant echoes of Roman innovation. Their roads weren't just routes from one place to another. They were the world's first integrated transportation system, designed with a vision and executed with a skill that continues to influence our lives almost 2,000 years after the empire itself crumbled to dust. As our own civilization grapples with the challenges of building and maintaining the infrastructure needed for the future, we would do well to remember the Roman example, both its triumphs and its ultimate failures. For in the story of Roman roads, we can find not just lessons about engineering and administration, but profound insights about the relationship between infrastructure, civilization, and the passage of time itself. As we reach the end of our journey through the remarkable story of Roman roads, let's reflect on what these ancient highways can teach us about civilization, innovation, and human connection. The Roman road system stands as one of humanity's greatest engineering achievements. Think about it. Without modern technology, satellites, or power tools, the Romans created a network of highways that transformed the ancient world. These weren't just paths between cities, they were the arteries of an empire that shaped human history. Through sheer determination, engineering brilliance, and remarkable organizational skills, they built over 400,000 kilometers of paved roads, enough to circle the earth 10 times. But the true genius of Roman roads wasn't just in their construction. It was in how they connected people, ideas, and cultures across 3 continents. These highways carried more than armies and trade goods. They transported philosophies, religions, and innovations. Christianity spread along Roman roads. Scientific knowledge traveled these paths. Art, literature, and new ways of thinking moved from one end of the empire to the other. The legacy of Roman roads continues to influence our world today. When you drive on many European highways, you're often following routes laid out by Roman surveyors 2,000 years ago. The width of many railway tracks can be traced back to the width of Roman roads, designed to accommodate 2 chariots side by side. Even our modern highway administration systems owe a debt to Roman methods of organizing road maintenance and funding. Perhaps the most profound lesson from Roman roads is about the relationship between infrastructure and civilization. The Romans understood something we sometimes forget, that the strength of a society isn't just in its armies or wealth, but in its ability to connect and communicate. When we look at our modern challenges, from maintaining aging infrastructure to connecting remote communities, we're wrestling with the same fundamental issues the Romans faced. This brings us to a fascinating question. What if the Romans had access to modern technology? Imagine Roman engineers with GPS satellites, earth-moving equipment, and advanced materials science. Would they have built even greater works? Would their empire have lasted longer? Or would they have faced the same fundamental challenges of maintaining vast networks across diverse territories? The story of Roman roads reminds us that great achievements require more than just technical skill. They need vision, organization, and the will to maintain what we build. As we face our own infrastructure challenges today, from crumbling bridges to the need for new, sustainable transportation systems, the Roman example offers both inspiration and warning. And so we end our journey along these ancient highways, but the legacy of Roman roads continues. Every time we drive on a straight highway, cross a bridge, or follow a route that's been used for millennia, we're connecting with this remarkable achievement of human ingenuity. Ancient history is full of epic tales like this one. What empire, battle, or historical figure would you like to learn about in our next video? If you were amazed by these historical facts, share this video with that friend who also loves mysteries from the past. Don't forget to subscribe to the Legacy of Empires channel, like this video, leave a comment, and share it with others who appreciate the incredible achievements of ancient civilizations. What ancient engineering marvel would you like us to explore next? Let us know in the comments below. Until our next historical adventure, remember, every road you travel today has a story that stretches back through time.